Close your eyes for a moment and imagine a time before planets, before oceans, before life. There was no earth, no air to breathe, no solid ground beneath anything at all, only darkness and stars. Every atom around you, the iron in your blood, the calcium in your bones, the oxygen you are breathing right now, was not born on this planet. It was forged in the heart of dying stars, long before you existed. Before this world even formed, the universe was quietly building the elements that would one day become everything. Tonight, you are not listening to chemistry. You are listening to origins. How stars burned, collapsed, and exploded to create matter itself. How simple particles learned to organize, combine, and slowly turn into worlds. You are not separate from this story. Your body carries the memory of ancient stars. Your atoms have traveled billions of years just to arrive here. As you listen, there is nothing you need to understand or remember. Let the story unfold slowly. Let the universe explain itself. Because this is not just where matter comes from. This is where **** come from. Everything you know began as stardust, long before planets took shape, and long before light reflected off solid surfaces. The universe existed in a state that could barely be called matter. There were no elements, no structure, no distinction between what would later become stars, worlds, or living bodies. Everything was simple, diffuse, and unfinished. In this early silence, the universe carried only potential, waiting for the conditions that would allow complexity to emerge. Stardust did not yet exist as dust. It existed as possibility. The first stars formed not gently, but through immense pressure and collapse. Gravity gathered clouds of hydrogen until heat ignited fusion at their cores. These stars were not decorations in space, they were factories. Inside them, the universe learned how to transform simplicity into diversity. Hydrogen fused into helium, helium into heavier elements, layer by layer, reaction by reaction. Stardust was born not in calm, but in sustained cosmic tension. As stars aged, they became increasingly complex within themselves. Their cores grew hotter, their reactions more intense, producing elements that could not exist under gentler conditions. Carbon, oxygen, silicon, iron, all required enormous pressure and time. These elements were not created for beauty or life. They were created because the physics of the universe allowed it. Stardust is the result of stars reaching their limits and exceeding them. Eventually, many of these stars could no longer support their own weight. When fusion could no longer counter gravity, collapse followed. Some stars exploded violently, scattering their newly formed elements into surrounding space. Others shed their outer layers slowly, releasing matter in long, glowing breaths. In both cases, the universe was seeded with stardust, fragments of stellar interiors now free to travel, collide, and combine. This stardust drifted for millions, sometimes billions of years, cooling and dispersing through vast regions of space. It did not rush toward purpose. It moved according to gravity, chance encounters, and time. Clouds of enriched dust gathered again, forming new stars, planets, and eventually environments where complexity could continue to unfold. Stardust did not end with the death of stars. It marked the beginning of everything that followed. When planets formed, they did so from this recycled material. Every rock, every metal, every molecule was assembled from remnants of ancient stars. Earth itself is not separate from the cosmos. It is a rearrangement of stellar debris. Stardust became solid ground, liquid oceans, and atmospheric gases without ever losing its origin. Matter changed form, but never history. As you listen now, there is no need to imagine distance or scale. Stardust is not far away or abstract. It exists in the quiet structure of your body and in the space around you. The universe did not stop creating when stars died. It continued through transformation. Everything begins as stardust, and nothing ever truly leaves it behind. And as this realization settles, the mind slows naturally, resting inside a story that began long before thought and continues without effort. After the first generation of stars scattered their inner material into space, the universe entered a slow and patient phase of remembering. Nothing moved with urgency. Stardust drifted through darkness, carrying within it the chemical history of stars that had already lived and died. These particles did not know what they would become, and the universe did not guide them toward a destination. Gravity alone whispered instructions, gently pulling matter together while allowing time to stretch almost endlessly. Stardust was not yet form or structure. It was raw memory suspended in motion. As clouds of enriched dust grew denser, subtle differences began to matter. Slight variations in temperature, pressure, and motion determined which regions would collapse again and which would remain diffuse. Over immense timescales, gravity gathered stardust into new centers, slowly compressing it until new stars ignited. These stars were different from the first ones. They carried complexity inherited from earlier generations. Each new star was born already containing the elements forged before it, making the universe increasingly layered rather than starting over. Within these later stars, fusion continued, but now it operated on richer material. The presence of heavier elements altered how energy flowed, how heat was distributed, and how reactions unfolded. Stardust inside stars became part of an ongoing process rather than a single event. Creation was no longer rare or explosive, it was iterative. The universe refined itself by repeating cycles, each time adding nuance, variation, and possibility. Stardust was learning how to persist through transformation. When these stars eventually released matter again, the dust they scattered was even more diverse. It contained combinations that had never existed before, enabling new forms of organization. This second and third generation of stardust behaved differently. It cooled more efficiently, clumped more easily, and formed more complex structures. Over time, disks of rotating matter emerged around young stars, flattening and organizing themselves through motion. Stardust began to settle, not by design, but by the simple rules of physics repeating patiently. Inside these disks, collisions became common. Dust grains stuck together, forming larger fragments, which in turn attracted more material. The universe experimented endlessly, assembling and disassembling matter until stability emerged. There was no blueprint for planets, only conditions that allowed them to happen. Stardust accumulated into bodies large enough to shape their surroundings, creating gravitational centers where further growth became easier. Matter learned to organize itself through repetition and scale. Planets formed slowly, layer by layer, carrying within them the full history of stellar evolution. Their cores held iron forged in collapsing stars, Their surfaces carried lighter elements shaped by gentler processes, and their atmospheres reflected ongoing chemical exchange. Stardust did not become uniform when it formed worlds. It became differentiated. Each layer preserved a different chapter of cosmic history, stacked quietly beneath surfaces that would later appear simple. As you listen now, it is important to notice how little force was required to create everything you see. No intention, no direction, no urgency, only time, gravity, and repetition. Stardust did not rush toward meaning. Meaning emerged because the universe allowed processes to unfold without interruption. And as this understanding settles, thought naturally slows, mirroring the same patience that shaped matter itself, allowing the mind to rest inside a story that continues calmly, without effort, even as awareness drifts towards sleep. As Stardust continued to gather and reorganize, the universe entered a phase where complexity no longer felt accidental, but inevitable. With each cycle of star birth and death, matter became more capable of forming stable structures. The universe was no longer experimenting blindly. It was refining patterns that had already proven durable. Stardust carried within it the memory of pressure, heat, collapse, and release, and these memories shaped how matter behaved the next time gravity called it together. Nothing was wasted. Every transformation informed the next, making creation quieter but more effective with time. Within vast molecular clouds, stardust mixed with cold gases, forming regions thick enough to block light itself. Inside these dark nurseries, matter slowed down. Energy dissipated gently, allowing atoms to settle into relationships that could survive disturbance. These environments were not violent like supernovae. They were patient and silent. Stardust learned to wait. And in that waiting, bonds formed that would later allow matter to organize at smaller, more precise scales. The universe was preparing the conditions for stability without ever announcing intention. As these clouds collapsed into rotating disks, motion itself became a shaping force. Angular momentum flattened chaos into order, guiding stardust into predictable paths. Within these disks, temperature gradients created regions where different materials could exist without immediately breaking apart. Close to the star, heat kept only the most resilient elements intact. Farther away, cooler conditions allowed lighter compounds to remain stable. Stardust sorted itself naturally, responding only to physics, yet producing complexity that appeared almost deliberate. Over immense spans of time, collisions within these disks became constructive rather than destructive. Tiny grains merged into larger bodies, which then attracted more matter through gravity alone. This process repeated endlessly, not because the universe wanted planets, but because accumulation was statistically favored over dispersal at sufficient scale. Stardust discovered weight. With weight came influence. With influence came structure. Matter learned that size itself could shape destiny, guiding the future without awareness. As protoplanets grew, their internal environments diverged dramatically. Pressure increased toward their cores, activating chemical behaviors that could not exist on the surface. Iron sank inward. Lighter materials rose. Layers formed, each preserving a record of the conditions under which they stabilized. Stardust did not become uniform when it became planetary. It became historical. Each layer told a story of temperature, pressure, and time, quietly storing information that would never need to be spoken. This layering created worlds capable of sustaining long-term change. Heat trapped inside planetary interiors drove movement, recycling matter through slow, relentless processes. Volcanism released gases. Atmospheres formed and evolved. Surfaces shifted gradually. Stardust was no longer static. It moved through cycles of transformation without losing continuity. What began in the heart of stars now circulated through planetary systems, adapting to environments far removed from its origin. As you listen now, notice how creation unfolds without urgency or intention. Stardust does not rush, and neither does the universe. Everything forms because conditions allow it, not because something demands it. This same patience exists within your own body, built from matter that learned stability over billions of years. As this realization settles, thought slows naturally, mirroring the same cosmic rhythm, steady, unforced, and calm, allowing awareness to rest inside a process that has never needed effort and never will. As the universe continued its quiet work, Stardust became less like a substance and more like a process. It was no longer simply material moving through space, but a continuous transformation unfolding across unimaginable spans of time. What had once been forged in extreme violence now participated in gentler cycles, guided by balance rather than collapse. Stardust flowed through stars, planets, and interstellar space without ever losing its identity, changing form while preserving history. The universe did not discard what it created. It recycled, refined, and redistributed it endlessly, allowing complexity to emerge without interruption. This continuity is what gives the universe its deep coherence. Nothing appears suddenly or without context. Every atom carries a lineage that stretches backward through stellar generations, connecting present matter to ancient processes that no longer exist in their original form. Stardust does not forget where it came from. Even as it becomes part of solid worlds, oceans, atmospheres, and eventually living systems, it retains the conditions under which it was shaped. Matter remembers pressure, remembers heat, remembers collapse, and these memories influence how it behaves long after the stars that formed it have faded. Over time, this accumulated history allowed the universe to support environments where change could occur slowly rather than catastrophically. Planets stabilized, orbits settled, energy flows found equilibrium. Stardust no longer needed to endure constant destruction to continue transforming. It could evolve through subtle rearrangements, chemical reactions, and long-term cycles. In these calmer conditions, matter gained the ability to organize itself into increasingly delicate structures, responding to forces far less extreme than those that created it. The universe learned how to sustain rather than merely create. This sustained stability is what eventually made life possible, not as an accident, but as a continuation of the same processes that shaped matter itself. Stardust did not suddenly become biological. It gradually entered environments where complexity could persist without collapse. Molecules formed and remained intact. Energy sources remained consistent. Chemical reactions repeated reliably. Stardust found itself participating in systems that could repair, adapt, and reproduce. Life did not interrupt cosmic history. It extended it inward, allowing the universe to continue evolving through new forms of organization. Even now, Stardust continues its journey without pause. Atoms move through cycles of formation and dissolution, passing through countless configurations while remaining fundamentally the same. The iron in planetary cores, the oxygen in atmospheres, and the carbon in living cells all remain part of a single, continuous process. Nothing is ever truly separate. Stardust connects everything quietly, ensuring that no object, no world, and no being exists in isolation from the rest of the universe. As you listen to this, it is important to recognize that this story is not distant or abstract. It is happening within you. The matter that makes up your body has already endured extremes beyond imagination and emerged into stability. It has traveled across cosmic distances, survived collapse, explosion, and silence, and arrived here without effort or intention. Your existence does not stand apart from the universe. It is one of its current forms, shaped by the same patient forces that shaped everything else. And as this understanding settles, there is no need to hold on to it or analyze it. The universe did not rush to become what it is, and neither must your mind. Stardust moves slowly, confidently, without resistance, and awareness can follow that same rhythm. Thought stretches and loosens, attention softens, and effort dissolves. Everything begins as stardust, and everything continues as stardust, still unfolding quietly, endlessly, allowing rest to arrive naturally, just as it always has. Stars are not objects placed into the universe for beauty or light. They are processes that never truly stop. From the moment a star is born, it begins transforming matter under pressures and temperatures so extreme that nothing similar exists elsewhere. Inside these vast furnaces, time stretches differently. Reactions unfold slowly, yet relentlessly, guided by physical laws that do not hurry and do not pause. Stars exist to change matter, and from their first ignition, they begin rewriting the universe at an atomic level, one fusion reaction at a time. At the heart of every star, gravity and heat maintain a delicate balance. Gravity pulls inward, compressing matter with immense force, while nuclear fusion pushes outward, releasing energy that resists collapse. This balance allows stars to burn steadily for millions or even billions of years. During this time, hydrogen atoms are forced together until they fuse into helium, releasing vast amounts of energy in the process. This simple transformation marks the beginning of all complexity, the first step in turning simplicity into structure. As stars age, their internal environments change. Hydrogen gradually becomes scarcer, and the star responds by increasing pressure and temperature at its core. New fusion pathways open. Helium begins to fuse into heavier elements, producing carbon and oxygen. These reactions require far more energy than earlier ones, and only stars with sufficient mass can sustain them. The universe does not create elements evenly. It does so selectively, depending on the conditions stars can maintain. Every element has a threshold, and stars cross these thresholds slowly, deliberately, without awareness. Deeper inside massive stars, fusion continues beyond carbon and oxygen. Neon, magnesium, silicon, and eventually iron form in layered shells, each requiring more extreme conditions than the last. These layers resemble the rings of a tree, each representing a different phase in the star's life. Iron marks a critical limit. Unlike lighter elements, fusing iron consumes energy instead of releasing it. When iron accumulates at a star's core, the balance that sustained the star begins to fail. Creation reaches its boundary. At this point, the star faces collapse. Without sufficient outward energy to counter gravity, the core contracts violently. In massive stars, this collapse triggers a supernova, an explosion so powerful that it briefly outshines entire galaxies. In this moment, conditions become extreme enough to create elements heavier than iron, gold, uranium, platinum, forged in fractions of a second. These elements do not form gently or gradually. They are born in chaos, scattered into space as the star destroys itself. The universe does not mourn these stars. Their destruction is not an ending, but a release. The elements they created are expelled into surrounding space, mixing with existing stardust and enriching future generations of matter. These remnants drift outward, cooling slowly, carrying with them the full chemical history of the star that formed them. Without stellar death, the universe would remain simple and sparse. Complexity depends on collapse as much as creation. As you listen now, consider how patient this process truly is. Stars spend vast lifetimes quietly assembling elements, only to release them in brief, decisive moments. Nothing is rushed, nothing is wasted. Matter is given time to become what it can, then allowed to move on. This same rhythm, long preparation, followed by gentle release, echoes throughout the universe. And as awareness settles into that rhythm, thought naturally slows, following the same unhurried pace that stars have always kept, allowing the mind to rest inside a process that continues calmly, far beyond any single moment. When stars release the elements they have forged, the universe enters another long and patient phase of transformation. The explosion or shedding of stellar material does not create order immediately. It creates possibility. Newly formed elements are hurled into space at extraordinary speeds, spreading outward into regions that may have remained untouched for billions of years. This matter does not settle quickly. It drifts, collides, cools, and disperses, carried by shock waves and gravity through immense distances. The universe allows time to do its work, knowing that nothing meaningful emerges without long periods of quiet rearrangement. As this enriched material spreads, it mixes with older clouds of gas and dust, changing their composition subtly but permanently. Regions that once contained only hydrogen and helium now carry traces of heavier elements, altering how they respond to gravity and heat. These changes may seem small, but over time, they transform how matter behaves. Dust becomes better at cooling, better at clumping, better at forming complex structures. The universe becomes more capable of building worlds with each generation of stellar death. Elements do not just add material, they add new rules to how matter can organize itself. Within these enriched clouds, gravity once again begins its slow work. Nothing announces the start of collapse. There is no moment when matter decides to become something else. Instead, density increases almost imperceptibly, drawing particles closer together until motion changes direction. Clouds begin to contract, rotating as they fall inward, flattening into disks under the conservation of angular momentum. The presence of heavier elements changes everything about this process, allowing structures to form that were impossible in earlier cosmic eras. Matter now has memory, and that memory guides its future. As new stars ignite within these disks, they inherit the chemical legacy of previous generations. They begin life already complex, already carrying the materials necessary for further transformation. Around them, remaining matter continues to orbit, collide, and accumulate. Dust grains stick together more easily now, aided by metals and silicates that provide surfaces for attachment. Over time, these grains grow into rocks and rocks into planetary bodies. The elements released by dead stars quietly assemble new systems without intention or awareness, guided only by physics and time. This process repeats across galaxies, creating diversity without design. Some regions form dense clusters of stars and planets, while others remain diffuse and empty. Outcomes vary not because of choice, but because conditions differ slightly from place to place. Temperature, density, motion, and composition all influence what emerges. Elements act as enablers, expanding the range of possibilities available to matter. The universe does not aim for life or complexity. It allows them to happen where conditions permit. Stardust provides the ingredients, but time determines the result. Over immense spans, this recycling of elements leads to worlds capable of sustaining long-term stability. Planets cool slowly, develop layered interiors, and maintain atmospheres shaped by ongoing chemical exchange. Surfaces change gradually, responding to internal heat and external influence. The elements forged in stars now participate in slow geological rhythms rather than violent stellar ones. Matter adapts to new environments, finding balance under gentler forces. The universe transitions from explosive creation to sustained evolution. As you listen now, notice how creation is never rushed. Stars take millions of years to prepare elements, and the universe takes millions more to decide what to do with them. There is no urgency, no deadline, no expectation of outcome. Everything unfolds because conditions allow it to unfold. This same patience can exist within awareness itself. Thought does not need to move quickly or resolve anything. Like enriched stardust drifting through space, it can slow, spread, and settle naturally, allowing rest to emerge without effort, carried by the same quiet processes that have always shaped everything. As elements spread through space and become part of new stellar systems, their influence begins to shape outcomes in ways that appear subtle at first, but grow profound over time. The universe does not distribute elements evenly, and this unevenness is what creates difference. Some regions become rich in heavy materials, while others remain light and simple. These differences determine how matter cools, how quickly structures form, and how stable those structures can become. Worlds do not emerge identical because the ingredients they inherit are never identical. Elements introduce individuality into the universe, quietly ensuring that no two systems unfold in exactly the same way. In regions where heavier elements are abundant, matter behaves differently under gravity. Dust grains collide more frequently and adhere more easily, accelerating the growth of solid bodies. Planets in these regions develop dense cores, layered interiors, and magnetic fields that influence their long-term evolution. Heat is retained longer, internal motion persists, and geological activity reshapes surfaces over vast timescales. Elements forged in ancient stars continue to work long after their creation, shaping worlds through slow, persistent influence rather than dramatic intervention. Elsewhere, where fewer heavy elements exist, worlds form more slowly or not at all. Gas dominates and solid material remains scarce. Structures that do emerge may lack stability, dispersing before they can evolve further. These regions are not failures of creation, they are expressions of a different balance. The universe allows emptiness and abundance to coexist, neither preferred nor corrected. Elements determine possibility, but they do not guarantee outcome. Stardust provides options, not instructions. As planetary systems mature, the specific mix of elements continues to guide development. Atmospheres form differently depending on chemical composition, influencing temperature, pressure, and long-term climate. Water may condense or escape. Gases may remain trapped or dissipate into space. Each outcome traces back to the elemental foundation laid by stars long before. Worlds become distinct, not because of chance alone, but because the universe preserves the conditions under which they formed, allowing diversity to emerge naturally. These differences extend beyond planets to entire galaxies. Spiral arms rich in star formation evolve differently from older, quieter regions where activity has slowed. Elements accumulate over time, gradually changing how galaxies behave and what they can support. The universe does not reset itself between cycles, it remembers. Each generation of stars leaves behind a more complex environment than the one it inherited. Elements are the carriers of this memory, embedding history into matter itself. Through this process, the universe becomes increasingly capable of sustaining long-term change. Stability emerges not through control, but through accumulation. Elements make it possible for matter to persist, to interact gently, and to evolve without constant destruction. Creation slows, but meaning deepens. Stardust no longer rushes from explosion to explosion. It settles into rhythms measured in billions of years. The universe trades violence for patience, expansion for refinement. As you listen now, let this sense of slow differentiation settle. Everything does not need to become the same to belong to the same universe. Difference arises naturally when conditions are allowed to vary. Your own thoughts can mirror this process, spreading gently, settling where they will, without pressure to resolve or align. Like elements drifting through space, awareness can move slowly, shaped by gravity rather than force, until it finds a place to rest calm, quiet, and unhurried. When the cycle of stars creating elements finally settles into a broader rhythm, the universe no longer feels like a place of isolated events, but like a continuous process unfolding without interruption. Stars are born, live, and die, yet the matter they shape never leaves the system. Elements forged in one generation become the foundation of the next, passing quietly through space as if carrying instructions written by time itself. Nothing begins from nothing, and nothing ends completely. Creation is layered, cumulative, and deeply patient, allowing complexity to grow without ever needing to start over. As this cycle repeats, the universe becomes increasingly capable of subtlety. Early cosmic history was dominated by extremes, immense heat, violent collapse, and explosive release. But as elements accumulated, matter gained the ability to interact more gently. Cooling became more efficient. Structures lasted longer. Balance replaced chaos as the dominant force shaping outcomes. The elements created in stars did more than add material. They softened the universe, allowing it to move away from constant destruction towards sustained transformation. Stardust matured alongside the cosmos itself. This maturity is reflected in how matter now behaves on large scales. Galaxies stabilize. Star formation slows in some regions while continuing steadily in others. Elements circulate through space not as debris, but as potential, waiting for conditions that allow new configurations to emerge. The universe does not force these configurations into existence. It allows them. Time stretches generously, offering matter the opportunity to settle into forms that can endure. Creation becomes less about dramatic beginnings and more about quiet continuity. Within this continuity, stars no longer appear as singular points of origin, but as participants in a larger system. Each star inherits the legacy of countless others and contributes its own chapter before releasing material back into circulation. This exchange creates a universe that is self-sustaining, capable of evolving without direction or intent. Elements serve as the connective tissue of this system, ensuring that no process exists in isolation. Everything contributes, and everything continues. The worlds that eventually form from this process carry the full weight of cosmic history within them. Their rocks, metals, atmospheres, and internal heat all trace back to stellar interiors that no longer exist. Yet these origins are not lost. They remain encoded in the behavior of matter, shaping how worlds evolve over billions of years. Planets become archives of stellar activity, preserving evidence of creation long after the stars themselves have faded from view. As understanding deepens, it becomes clear that stars do not create elements once and then disappear from relevance. Their influence persists in every interaction between atoms, every bond that forms, every structure that holds. Elements continue to respond to the conditions under which they were forged, carrying forward the physics of stars into entirely new environments. The universe remains unified because its components share a common history, even as they diverge into countless forms. As you listen now, allow this sense of continuity to slow your awareness. Nothing is fragmented, nothing is rushed. The same processes that transformed hydrogen into complexity continue quietly, without interruption, shaping everything you see and everything you are. Thought does not need to follow each step. Like matter itself, it can drift, settle, and rest within a system that has never required urgency. Stars create the elements, elements create worlds, and the universe continues calm, patient, and endlessly unfolding, inviting the mind to release effort and follow the same gentle rhythm into rest. In the earliest stages of the universe, nothing could remain still long enough to become matter. Heat dominated everything. Energy moved too violently, tearing apart any structure before it could stabilize. Fire was not an event or a place. It was the natural state of existence itself. Particles collided endlessly, light scattered freely, and nothing could hold its shape. The universe existed as motion rather than substance, governed by forces too intense to allow permanence. Matter had not yet learned how to stay. As time expanded, the universe began to cool, not suddenly, but with immense patience. Expansion diluted energy, stretching space itself and allowing temperatures to fall gradually. This cooling was not passive, it was transformative. As energy levels dropped, particles began to interact differently. They slowed just enough to recognize each other, to remain close rather than scatter immediately. Fire did not disappear, but it softened, retreating from dominance and allowing stability to emerge in its absence. The universe transitioned from pure energy towards something that could endure. Within stars, fire returned in a controlled form. Nuclear fusion recreated extreme heat, but now contained by gravity. This containment was crucial. Fire was no longer everywhere. It was localized, focused, and sustained. Inside stellar cores, Energy was no longer destructive chaos, but a tool. It fused particles together instead of tearing them apart. Fire became creative rather than disruptive, shaping matter under precise conditions that the broader universe could no longer provide. Through this controlled fire, matter gained weight and identity. Elements formed with distinct properties, each responding differently to heat, pressure, and time. Iron became dense and stable. Carbon became flexible and versatile. Oxygen reacted readily, enabling complexity. These elements carried the memory of fire within them, shaped by the temperatures that created them. Matter was no longer simple residue. It was structured outcome, forged intentionally by conditions that demanded precision. As stars released these elements, fire gave way to quieter forces. Gravity, chemistry, and motion took over, guiding matter through slower transformations. Heat still existed, but it no longer ruled. Matter cooled, condensed, and organized itself into solids, liquids, and gases. Worlds formed where energy flowed gently rather than violently. Fire stepped back, allowing matter to explore stability, layering, and long-term change. Creation slowed, but it did not stop. It became sustainable. This transition from fire to matter is what allowed the universe to develop memory. Fire destroys information, matter preserves it. Once matter stabilized, history could accumulate. Layers formed. Structures endured. Processes could repeat without starting from nothing each time. The universe began to remember its past through the behavior of matter itself. Stardust carried this memory forward, embedding the story of fire into solid form without needing to burn again. As you listen now, notice how this same transition exists within your own experience. Intensity gives way to calm, motion gives way to stillness. Fire does not vanish. It becomes contained, supportive rather than overwhelming. The universe learned how to rest without losing energy, and so can the mind. Thought slows, heat dissipates, and awareness settles into form, quiet, stable, and present, allowing rest to arrive naturally, just as matter once did when fire finally learned how to hold itself. Once matter learned how to survive heat, it faced a new challenge, remaining intact over time. Stability did not arrive suddenly, nor did it emerge everywhere at once. It appeared only where conditions allowed energy to flow without overwhelming structure. Matter became possible when motion slowed just enough for particles to recognize patterns rather than collide blindly. This balance between movement and stillness defined the transition from temporary existence to permanence. The universe did not force matter to last. It created conditions where lasting became possible. As temperatures dropped across expanding space, atoms gained the ability to hold onto one another. Bonds formed not because particles sought connection, but because energy levels allowed it. Electrons settled into orbits, nuclei remained intact, and atoms stopped tearing themselves apart. These early forms of matter were fragile, easily disrupted by energy fluctuations. Yet over time, as the universe continued cooling, fragility gave way to resilience. Matter learned how to absorb disturbance without losing identity, marking the beginning of durability. Within this new environment, chemistry emerged as a quiet organizing force. Atoms combined into molecules, molecules into larger structures, each step requiring less energy than the last. Matter no longer needed extreme conditions to exist. It thrived in moderation. This shift allowed complexity to accumulate gradually, layer by layer, without resetting. The universe transitioned from dramatic creation to sustained construction. Matter became something that could be built upon rather than repeatedly destroyed. Gravity played a crucial role in reinforcing this stability. By gathering matter into concentrated regions, gravity protected it from dispersal. Within planets and stars, pressure and temperature stabilized further, creating environments where matter could persist for billions of years. These regions acted as shelters, allowing complex structures to survive long enough to evolve. Matter no longer drifted aimlessly. It found homes where change could occur slowly rather than violently. Over time, matter began to exhibit memory through structure. Crystals formed repeating patterns. Rocks layered themselves through deposition. Planets developed internal organization, preserving records of their formation. Matter started to store history, not as information, but as arrangement. Each structure reflected the conditions under which it stabilized, carrying that record forward without awareness. The universe learned how to remember without needing consciousness. This persistence allowed the universe to slow its pace. Where fire demanded constant motion, matter allowed rest. Processes unfolded over geological and cosmic timescales rather than explosive moments. Energy flowed gently, cycling through systems rather than escaping entirely. Matter became the medium through which the universe could explore complexity without burning itself out. Stability was not stagnation, it was endurance. As you listen now, let this sense of endurance settle. Matter exists because it learned how to remain without effort, and awareness can do the same. Thought does not need to move constantly to exist. It can settle into form, holding its shape gently without force. Just as matter learned to persist in a cooling universe, the mind can rest within calm, allowing stillness to take shape naturally, carrying you softly towards sleep without resistance. Once matter became stable enough to endure, the universe encountered a new possibility that had never existed before: accumulation without collapse. For the first time, structures could persist long enough to interact repeatedly, and repetition is the foundation of complexity. Matter no longer existed as isolated fragments drifting through space. It began to participate in ongoing relationships governed by proximity, motion, and energy exchange. These relationships did not require intention. They emerged naturally wherever matter remained long enough to influence itself. Complexity did not arrive as a goal, but as a consequence of endurance. As atoms combined into molecules, new behaviors appeared that could not be predicted from individual components alone. Molecules interacted differently than atoms, forming bonds that altered how energy moved through systems. These interactions allowed matter to respond to its environment rather than simply endure it. Temperature changes, pressure variations, and chemical gradients began to matter. Systems formed that could adjust, reorganize, and persist under changing conditions. The universe discovered flexibility, a property that allowed matter to remain stable without becoming static. Over vast timescales, these molecular systems grew increasingly intricate. Simple compounds interacted to form larger networks, each layer adding new possibilities for organization. Matter did not rush toward complexity. It drifted into it through countless small interactions repeated endlessly. Where conditions remained stable, these interactions accumulated rather than dissolving. Complexity emerged not through dramatic events, but through patience. The universe learned that small changes, given enough time, could produce structures of remarkable intricacy. Gravity continued to guide this process, concentrating matter into environments where interactions became more frequent. Within planets, surfaces cooled and hardened, creating boundaries where chemistry could operate slowly and predictably. Liquids flowed, gases circulated, and solids provided scaffolding for long-term change. Matter was no longer merely present, it was active, participating in cycles that reinforced organization rather than disrupting it. Complexity thrived wherever matter could remain long enough to influence itself repeatedly. As complexity increased, systems began to exhibit patterns that persisted across time. Feedback loops formed, allowing structures to maintain themselves under disturbance. Energy flowed through these systems in regulated ways, preventing collapse while enabling change. The universe did not design these systems, it allowed them to appear wherever conditions permitted. Complexity was not imposed, it emerged naturally when matter, energy, and time aligned in balance. Stardust continued its journey, now participating in processes far removed from the fires that forged it. This gradual evolution of matter transformed the universe into a place capable of sustaining long narratives rather than isolated moments. History accumulated, processes became layered. Outcomes depended increasingly on what had happened before. Matter carried forward the influence of its past configurations, shaping its future behavior. The universe became a place where continuity mattered, where change was guided by memory embedded in structure. Complexity was not chaos, it was organized persistence. As you listen now, allow this slow emergence of complexity to quiet your own awareness. Nothing here requires effort or urgency. Just as matter evolved by remaining present through countless small interactions, thought can soften by staying without pushing forward. Awareness does not need to resolve or conclude anything. It can rest inside continuity, letting patterns unfold gently. Complexity arises without force, and rest arrives the same way, slowly, naturally, as the mind settles into a rhythm that no longer needs to move, allowing sleep to emerge as the quiet expression of endurance itself. As matter continued to endure and interact, something subtle but profound began to emerge: order. Not imposed order, not designed structure, but a quiet tendency toward arrangement that arose wherever energy flowed gently enough to allow repetition. The universe did not eliminate randomness, it softened it. Fire once scattered everything indiscriminately, but matter learned how to redirect energy rather than surrender to it. This redirection allowed patterns to stabilize, persist, and slowly refine themselves over time. Order was not a replacement for chaos, but its long-term transformation. This order appeared first in the simplest forms. Crystals repeated the same geometric arrangements again and again, responding to environmental conditions with precision and consistency. Layers of sediment formed predictable sequences. Planetary orbits settled into rhythms that could last for billions of years. These patterns were not conscious, yet they behaved as if they remembered how to remain intact. Matter discovered that predictability was not limitation, but survival. Order allowed change to happen without collapse. As order strengthened, complexity gained a foundation sturdy enough to build upon. Systems no longer reset completely when disturbed. Instead, they absorbed disruption and reorganized themselves. Feedback loops emerged, allowing structures to maintain balance through adjustment rather than resistance. Energy flowed through matter in controlled ways, fueling transformation without destroying form. The universe found a way to evolve without burning itself back into simplicity. Matter became the medium through which continuity could exist. This transition from raw fire to ordered matter reshaped the tempo of the cosmos. Events slowed, processes lengthened, outcomes depended less on singular moments and more on accumulated history. The universe began to behave like a story rather than a sequence of explosions. Each state carried forward traces of the one before it, creating coherence across time. Matter did not forget the fire that formed it. It incorporated that intensity into structures capable of holding it gently. Within planets, this order manifested as layered interiors, circulating atmospheres, and surfaces that changed gradually rather than violently. Heat moved upward, pressure settled downward, and chemistry unfolded within narrow ranges that allowed persistence. Matter no longer needed extreme conditions to transform. It could evolve through subtle shifts repeated endlessly. Fire still existed, but it no longer ruled. It became one influence among many, contained and balanced by structure. As stardust moved through these ordered systems, it became part of environments where change could be observed rather than endured. Worlds stabilized enough to host long-term processes, including those that would eventually turn inward, allowing the universe to continue its evolution through increasingly delicate forms of organization. Matter became capable of supporting meaning, not because it sought it, but because order allowed continuity. Fire gave birth to matter, and matter learned how to remember. As you listen now, let this sense of order settle into awareness. Nothing here demands effort or attention. The universe learned how to slow itself without stopping, and the mind can follow the same path. Thought does not need to burn brightly to exist. It can soften into structure, holding its shape gently, allowing silence to form naturally around it. From fire to matter, from motion to stillness, everything finds its place in time, and in that quiet placement, rest arrives effortlessly, carrying awareness towards sleep with the same calm patience that shaped the universe itself. Without elements, the universe would remain trapped in simplicity, endlessly expanding but never truly changing. Energy alone cannot remember, cannot accumulate, cannot build upon itself. Elements give the universe weight, resistance, and duration. They allow matter to slow down enough to interact repeatedly, and repetition is the only way complexity can survive. The universe needs elements not for decoration or variety, but because they create friction against chaos. They prevent everything from dissolving back into uniform motion, offering structure a chance to exist long enough to matter. Elements act as anchors within an expanding cosmos. As space stretches and energy thins, elements provide points of stability where processes can continue rather than fade. Hydrogen alone cannot do this. It is too simple, too easily dispersed. Heavier elements interact more richly, forming bonds that endure under changing conditions. These interactions allow systems to persist even as the universe evolves. Without elements, nothing could resist dilution. Everything would drift apart without leaving a trace of what came before. The universe also needs elements to store its own history. Fire erases information. Elements preserve it. Each atom carries within it the conditions under which it was formed, influencing how it behaves forever after. Iron responds differently to pressure than carbon. Oxygen reacts differently than silicon. These differences are not arbitrary. They encode the environments that created them. Through elements, the universe remembers its past without awareness, embedding memory into matter itself. This memory allows future structures to inherit stability rather than starting from nothing. As elements accumulate, they enable feedback. Matter begins to influence its surroundings, shaping temperature, motion, and energy flow in return. Planets retain heat. Atmospheres regulate climate. Magnetic fields shield surfaces. None of this is possible without elements capable of interacting across scales. The universe needs elements to slow itself down, to create regions where time can stretch without dissolving form. Elements give the cosmos patience. In their absence, nothing could remain localized. There would be no centers of gravity strong enough to gather matter repeatedly, no surfaces to hold change, no interiors to trap energy long enough for transformation. Elements make boundaries possible, and boundaries allow systems to exist. The universe does not need borders for control, but for continuity. Elements create those borders gently, without intention, simply by being what they are. Over billions of years, elements allow the universe to transition from explosive beginnings to sustained evolution. They turn violent creation into quiet persistence. Stars burn fiercely, but planets endure. Galaxies shift slowly. Worlds cool, layer, and stabilize. Elements are the reason the universe can tell long stories instead of short events. They transform the cosmos from a moment into a narrative. As you listen now, allow this need for elements to reflect inward. Stability is not resistance to change. It is the condition that allows change to matter. Just as the universe needed elements to slow itself enough to evolve, the mind can slow without losing motion. Thought can settle into form without becoming rigid. Awareness can rest within structure, allowing time to stretch gently. And in that slowing, just as in the universe itself, meaning no longer rushes, it remains, quietly, making rest possible. Without elements, the universe would never slow enough to become a place where anything could remain. Expansion would continue unchecked, thinning matter until interaction became impossible. Energy would pass through space without resistance, leaving no trace of what had occurred before. There would be motion, but no memory. Elements are what give the universe friction, allowing processes to linger instead of vanish. They create the conditions where energy can circulate rather than escape, and where change can accumulate rather than reset. Without elements, the universe would be active but empty of consequence. Worlds require elements not only to form, but to endure. A planet is not simply a collection of matter, it is a balance of forces sustained over immense time. Elements make this balance possible by providing density, structure, and internal differentiation. Heavy elements sink inward, forming cores that trap heat and drive long-term geological activity. Lighter elements rise, shaping surfaces and atmospheres. This layering allows planets to regulate themselves rather than dissolve under external influence. Without elements, there would be no interiors, no surfaces, no distinction between inside and outside. Life, as a continuation of cosmic organization, depends even more deeply on elements. Biological systems require stability at scales far smaller than planets can provide alone. Elements like carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, and phosphorus possess bonding properties that allow molecules to remain flexible without collapsing. These elements can form chains, rings, and networks that respond to their environment while maintaining identity. Without such elements, chemistry would remain simple and brittle, incapable of sustaining the subtle balance required for living systems to persist over time. Elements also allow the universe to regulate temperature and energy flow. Atmospheres exist because gases can be retained by gravity, interacting through pressure and chemistry. Oceans form because certain compounds remain liquid across narrow temperature ranges. Climate emerges because elements absorb, reflect, and redistribute energy rather than allowing it to escape immediately. These processes do not require intention, but they do require material capable of interaction. Elements provide that capability, turning raw energy into patterns that can stabilize rather than destroy. Without elements, there would be no cycles, no water cycle, no carbon cycle, no long-term exchange between surface and interior. Cycles allow systems to recover, adapt, and continue. They prevent exhaustion. The universe needs cycles to avoid stagnation and collapse, and cycles depend on elements that can move between states without losing coherence. Elements make repetition meaningful. They allow change to return to itself rather than dissipate entirely. Over time, these repeating cycles allow complexity to deepen without accelerating. Worlds evolve slowly, maintaining continuity across billions of years. Elements ensure that transformation does not erase what came before. Mountains rise and erode, atmospheres thicken and thin. Life appears and adapts. None of this would be possible if matter could not hold its shape long enough to participate in ongoing processes. Elements are the quiet reason the universe can evolve instead of endlessly beginning again. As you listen now, let this necessity of elements settle into awareness. Nothing complex survives without structure, and nothing meaningful persists without continuity. The universe learned to slow itself by creating elements, and the mind can follow the same principle. Thought does not need to vanish to rest. It needs structure gentle enough to hold it. Awareness can settle without disappearing. Just as elements allow worlds to exist, calm allows rest to take shape slowly, naturally, without effort guiding the mind towards sleep. In the same quiet way the universe guides itself toward order. Elements do more than allow the universe to exist. They allow it to organize itself without collapsing back into chaos. Organization is not control, and it is not design. It is the natural outcome of matter interacting under conditions that permit persistence. Elements give matter predictable behaviors, and predictability allows systems to stabilize. When atoms respond consistently to pressure, heat, and proximity, patterns can repeat. Repetition creates reliability, and reliability is the foundation of order. Without elements, nothing would behave the same way twice, and without consistency, no structure could last long enough to matter. The universe relies on this consistency to build layered systems rather than isolated objects. Stars depend on elemental reactions to regulate their lifespans. Planets depend on elemental differentiation to maintain internal balance. Atmospheres depend on elemental interactions to circulate energy rather than lose it to space. Each layer of organization rests upon the predictable behavior of elements beneath it. This stacking of order allows complexity to emerge without overwhelming the system. The universe does not leap into structure. It builds it patiently, layer by layer, because elements make layering possible. Elements also allow the universe to create boundaries without separation. A boundary is not a wall, it is a region where behavior changes gradually rather than abruptly. Planetary surfaces, atmospheric layers, and magnetic fields are all examples of boundaries created through elemental interaction. These boundaries protect internal processes while remaining open to exchange. Energy enters, transforms, and exits without destroying structure. Without elements capable of forming such gradients, the universe would lack the subtle transitions required for stability. Everything would either scatter or collapse. Over time, these boundaries allow systems to develop internal rhythms. Day and night cycles emerge. Seasonal patterns stabilize climates. Geological processes unfold slowly rather than violently. Elements absorb shock, distribute energy, and release it gradually. This buffering effect is essential. It prevents systems from responding to change with immediate destruction. The universe needs elements not just to create form, but to soften change itself. Elements act as mediators between extremes, ensuring that transformation can occur without erasure. As systems become more ordered, they gain the ability to influence their own future. Feedback loops form, allowing structures to adjust to disturbance rather than be defined by it. A planet with an atmosphere can regulate temperature. A magnetic field can deflect harmful radiation. Chemical cycles can replenish resources rather than exhaust them. These abilities are not conscious, yet they resemble intention because they preserve continuity. Elements enable this self-regulation by providing stable rules of interaction that systems can rely on over time. This gradual emergence of order changes the character of the universe. Creation becomes less explosive and more deliberate, not because something decides to slow down, but because the presence of elements allows gentler pathways to dominate. The universe shifts from constant upheaval to sustained evolution. It becomes a place where change can be observed, recorded, and remembered rather than simply endured. Elements transform the cosmos into an environment capable of hosting long stories instead of brief flashes. As you listen now, allow this sense of order to calm awareness. Nothing here is forced, and nothing is rushed. Just as the universe relies on elements to soften motion into rhythm, the mind can soften thought into quiet continuity. Attention does not need to scatter or collapse. It can rest within structure, held gently by patterns that do not demand effort. And in that resting, just as in the universe itself, order does not feel restrictive. It feels like relief, guiding awareness slowly and naturally towards sleep. As the universe continues to unfold, it becomes clear that elements are not merely components of matter, but the rhythm through which existence sustains itself. Without elements, the universe would expand endlessly, without ever settling into patterns that could endure. Motion would dominate, scattering energy so completely that no structure could remain long enough to interact with itself. Elements slow the universe down just enough to allow repetition, and repetition is the quiet force behind continuity. They give the cosmos a tempo that does not rush, a pace that allows transformation to occur without erasing what came before. This slowing does not stop change, it makes change meaningful. When matter behaves predictably, interactions leave traces. Heat reshapes form gradually rather than violently. Pressure reorganizes structure instead of destroying it. Elements allow energy to move through systems in cycles rather than escapes, creating feedback that stabilizes complexity. The universe needs these cycles because without them, every moment would be disconnected from the next. Elements weave moments together, turning time into a continuous flow rather than a series of isolated instants. Over immense spans of time, this continuity allows the universe to develop character. Regions of space become distinct, shaped by the elements they contain and the histories they preserve. Galaxies mature. Star formation slows and accelerates in waves. Worlds evolve environments that remain stable long enough to support long-term processes. None of this requires intention or awareness. It requires only matter capable of remembering how it behaved before. Elements provide that memory, embedding it into the fabric of reality itself. As systems grow more complex, elements enable harmony rather than conflict. Different forces balance one another because elements respond consistently across scales. Gravity gathers, chemistry binds, energy circulates. The universe does not collapse under its own weight because elements distribute stress gently, allowing systems to adapt rather than break. This balance is not fragile. It is resilient precisely because it is slow. Elements favor endurance over speed, stability over intensity. They teach the universe how to persist. This persistence transforms the universe from a place of constant beginning into a place of continuation. Events no longer need to restart creation from simplicity. Each new structure builds upon what already exists, inheriting order rather than reinventing it. Elements ensure that nothing is lost completely, that every transformation leaves something behind to shape what comes next. The universe becomes layered, deepened by its own history, capable of sustaining complexity without exhausting itself. In this layered universe, meaning does not rush to appear. It accumulates quietly through arrangement and repetition. Elements allow form to hold long enough for significance to emerge naturally. Worlds become environments rather than accidents. Processes unfold without urgency. The cosmos learns how to rest within its own motion. Creation becomes less dramatic but more profound, expressed through subtle change rather than explosive events. As you listen now, allow this deep necessity of elements to slow awareness completely. Nothing here is asking to be understood or remembered. The universe does not hurry, and neither must the mind. Just as elements allow reality to settle into enduring patterns, attention can settle into stillness without disappearing. Thought softens, effort dissolves, and awareness drifts gently into a quiet continuity where nothing needs to happen next. The universe rests inside its elements, and the mind can rest the same way, carried calmly towards sleep by a rhythm that has always known how to endure. Everything the universe learned to create did not stop at stars or planets. It continued inward, quietly assembling itself into forms small enough to move, breathe, and feel. The elements forged in stellar fire did not disappear into distant worlds alone. They traveled, transformed, and eventually became part of living systems. Your body is not separate from this process. It is one of its most recent expressions. Every cell carries atoms that once burned inside stars, cooled in space, and settled into matter long before life existed. The universe did not end its work when it formed worlds. It continued by turning elements inward. Inside you, elements exist in delicate balance, arranged not by chance, but by the same physical rules that shaped galaxies. Carbon forms the flexible backbone of your molecules, allowing structure without rigidity. Oxygen moves constantly, enabling energy exchange that keeps systems alive. Iron carries memory of stellar collapse within your blood, transporting oxygen with quiet precision. Calcium shapes bones and signals movement. These elements are not symbols. They are active participants in every moment of your existence. The universe operates within you at a scale small enough to feel invisible, yet powerful enough to sustain life. What makes this remarkable is not that these elements exist inside you, but that they remain in motion without falling apart. Your body is a stable system only because elements learned long ago how to cooperate rather than collide. Chemical bonds form and release energy gently, maintaining balance instead of destruction. This balance allows your body to renew itself continuously without losing form. Cells divide, repair, and replace themselves, yet the overall structure remains. Stardust learned how to persist, and that persistence now appears as life. These elements do not work in isolation. They communicate through gradients, signals, and reactions that echo the same principles seen across the universe. Energy flows where it is needed. Matter rearranges itself in response to pressure and demand. Systems regulate themselves through feedback rather than force. Your body does not command elements to behave. It provides conditions under which behavior remains stable. Life is not control over matter, but cooperation with it. The universe learned cooperation first, and life inherited that lesson. Even your nervous system reflects this elemental heritage. Electrical signals move through sodium and potassium gradients. Neurotransmitters rely on precise chemical structures to transmit meaning without words. Thought itself emerges from elemental interactions shaped by time and repetition. There is no separation between mind and matter here. Awareness arises because elements interact predictably enough to support continuity. Consciousness is not imposed upon the universe, it is allowed by it, emerging where elements remain stable long enough to support complex patterns. Your body is not a finished object, but an ongoing process. Elements enter, transform, and leave constantly. Breath exchanges gases, food rearranges atoms, heat dissipates. Nothing stays fixed, yet everything holds together. This is the same rhythm seen in stars, planets, and galaxies change without collapse, motion without loss. Life is the universe practicing stability at a more intimate scale, using the same materials it has always used, simply arranged with greater delicacy. As you listen now, there is no need to locate yourself within the cosmos. You are already inside it, and it is already inside you. The elements that once drifted through space now move quietly through your body, sustaining balance without effort. You do not need to guide them or understand them. They already know how to work together. Awareness can soften into that trust, releasing tension, allowing breath to deepen, and letting thought slow. Just as elements learn to rest within structure, the mind can rest within itself, drifting gently towards sleep, carried by a process far older than thought and far calmer than effort. Inside your body, balance is never static. It is maintained moment by moment through countless elemental exchanges that happen quietly, without awareness, and without interruption. Sodium and potassium move across cell membranes in carefully regulated gradients, allowing signals to travel without overwhelming the system. Calcium enters and exits cells at precise times, triggering movement, contraction, and release. Magnesium tempers reactions, preventing excess. These elements do not act independently. They respond to one another continuously, creating a dynamic equilibrium that keeps the body functioning without chaos. Balance is not achieved by stopping motion, but by guiding it gently. This guidance does not come from command, but from conditions. Your body does not tell elements what to do. It maintains environments where certain behaviors are favored over others. Temperature, pressure, concentration, and availability shape how elements interact. When balance is disturbed, elements shift automatically, redistributing themselves to restore stability. This process is slow enough to be sustainable, yet fast enough to prevent collapse. The universe learned this long before life existed, and the body inherited the same principles, applying them at a scale intimate enough to feel personal. Within every cell, elements participate in cycles that repeat endlessly without losing precision. Carbon frameworks provide structure flexible enough to adapt. Oxygen enables energy release without combustion. Hydrogen balances acidity, preventing extremes. Phosphorus stores and transfers energy in forms that can be reused rather than exhausted. These cycles allow cells to repair themselves, communicate, and continue without resetting. The body remains itself not because nothing changes, but because change is organized. Elements allow renewal without erasure. What makes this balance remarkable is its tolerance for variation. The body does not require perfection to function. Elemental systems are designed to absorb fluctuation without failure. Levels rise and fall, demands increase and decrease, yet stability remains. This resilience mirrors planetary systems that endure impacts, climate shifts, and internal change without losing coherence. The same elemental logic that stabilizes worlds stabilizes you, allowing adaptation without fragility. Balance here is forgiving, not rigid. Even during rest, elements remain active. Breathing adjusts gas concentrations. Blood redistributes minerals. Cells clear waste and restore gradients. Sleep itself is supported by elemental shifts that quiet excitation and favor restoration. Calcium signaling slows. Potassium currents stabilize. Magnesium supports relaxation. The body does not shut down, it recalibrates. Elements guide this recalibration silently, ensuring that rest deepens rather than disrupts. Sleep is not absence of activity, it is activity arranged toward repair. Over time, these elemental processes shape how the body experiences ease and tension. When balance is supported, movement feels lighter, breath deeper, and thought slower. When balance is strained, effort increases and awareness sharpens defensively. The body responds not with language, but with sensation. These sensations are not messages to interpret, but reflections of elemental state. The universe speaks through balance, not instruction, and the body listens by adjusting rather than reasoning. As you listen now, there is no need to intervene in these processes. Elements have maintained balance for billions of years without guidance. Your body already knows how to settle. Awareness can release responsibility and trust the same quiet intelligence that stabilizes stars and planets. Breath deepens on its own. Muscles soften without effort. Thought stretches and loosens. Balance does not need to be achieved. It is already in motion. And as that motion slows gently, awareness follows naturally, drifting into rest, carried by elemental rhythms that have always known how to sustain calm. Over long periods of time, the elements inside your body begin to shape not only physical balance, but the rhythm of experience itself. The way energy rises and falls, the way tension appears and dissolves, and the way awareness shifts between alertness and rest are all influenced by elemental movement beneath perception. These processes are older than language and faster than thought. They do not ask for permission or instruction. They operate continuously, maintaining a quiet intelligence that keeps the body within ranges where life can continue without strain. Balance here is not an idea. It is an ongoing physical conversation. This conversation unfolds through countless exchanges that never demand attention. Ions pass through channels, molecules bind and release, fluids redistribute themselves according to pressure and need. None of this feels dramatic, yet everything depends on it. When these movements remain coordinated, the body experiences coherence rather than conflict. Effort decreases, recovery accelerates. Sensation softens. The universe's long training in stability expresses itself here as comfort, ease, and the ability to remain present without urgency. Elements do not rush toward equilibrium. They circle it patiently, adjusting as needed. As balance deepens, the nervous system responds by reducing unnecessary vigilance. Signals that once demanded immediate reaction quiet themselves. Muscles release microtensions accumulated through effort. Breathing shifts towards slower, fuller cycles. These changes do not occur because the mind decides to relax, but because elemental conditions favor regulation over activation. The body senses that it can afford to slow. Safety emerges not from certainty, but from consistency. The same patterns repeat, and repetition builds trust at a level far beneath thought. This trust allows the body to enter states where repair becomes possible. During these states, elements are redistributed toward restoration rather than action. Minerals return to cells. Waste products are cleared. Gradients are reset gently rather than forcefully. The body does not repair itself by stopping activity, but by reorganizing it. Elements lead this reorganization with precision learned over billions of years. What appears as rest is actually coordination occurring without resistance. Life continues quietly, refining itself rather than pushing forward. Over time, this elemental coordination shapes emotional tone as well. When balance is supported, emotions arise without overwhelming the system. They move through awareness rather than remaining fixed. The body does not cling to activation when it knows how to return to regulation. Emotional intensity softens because it no longer needs to signal urgency. The elements that stabilize physical systems also stabilize experiential ones. The universe repeats its patterns inward, ensuring that complexity does not collapse into chaos. Even identity is influenced by this slow elemental harmony. The sense of continuity you experience from moment to moment depends on matter behaving predictably enough to support memory, perception, and awareness. When elements remain coordinated, the feeling of being yourself feels effortless. There is no need to assert or defend identity. It simply persists. This persistence mirrors planetary stability and stellar cycles' existence, maintained not by force, but by balanced interaction across time. As you listen now, Allow this deep elemental intelligence to take over completely. There is nothing you need to manage or adjust. The same processes that stabilized galaxies and planets are quietly stabilizing you. Awareness can rest inside that reliability. Thought can loosen without disappearing. Sensation can soften without fading. Balance continues without supervision. And as this quiet coordination deepens, the body naturally guides awareness towards sleep, not as an ending, but as another state where elements rearrange gently, sustaining life through rest as calmly as they sustain it through motion. As the elemental systems within your body continue their quiet work, they no longer feel like mechanisms or processes, but like a steady background presence that never draws attention to itself. Balance stops announcing itself through sensation and becomes an absence of disturbance. The body no longer signals urgency because nothing requires immediate correction. Elements move where they are needed, pause where stability is required, and adjust without resistance. This silent cooperation allows the body to exist without constant negotiation, maintaining itself through continuity rather than effort. What feels like calm is simply the body remembering how to stay within itself. This remembering is not stored in the mind, but in structure. The arrangement of elements within tissues, fluids, and cells reflects a history of successful balance repeated countless times. The body does not reinvent equilibrium each moment, it returns to it. Even after disruption, the system knows where to settle because it has done so before. Elements carry this memory forward, ensuring that stability is not fragile. Recovery becomes possible because balance has a place to return to. The universe taught matter how to remember, and the body applies that lesson continuously. As this internal steadiness deepens, effort gradually dissolves. Muscles no longer hold unnecessary tension. Breath becomes slower, fuller, and more regular without conscious control. The nervous system releases its grip on vigilance because elemental conditions no longer support alarm. Signals quiet themselves. The body senses that it can afford to rest, not because everything is perfect, but because nothing is collapsing. Safety here is not certainty, it is reliability. The same patterns continue, and continuity is enough. Over time, this elemental reliability reshapes how rest itself unfolds. Sleep no longer feels like an interruption of activity, but like a natural reconfiguration. Elements redistribute gently, shifting emphasis from action to repair. Gradients reset, energy stores replenish. The body does not stop functioning, it functions differently. Sleep becomes an extension of balance rather than an escape from imbalance. Elements guide this transition without instruction, following rhythms older than consciousness. In this state, awareness no longer needs to monitor the body. Sensation softens into background presence. Thought loosens its attachment to direction and purpose. The mind does not disappear, it rests lightly, supported by physical systems that continue without supervision. Identity remains intact without effort because the elemental foundation beneath it remains coherent. Nothing needs to be held together consciously. Stability is already in place. This is where the story turns inward completely. The universe that once forged elements in stars now sustains you through quiet coordination. The same patience that allowed matter to organize over billions of years now allows your body to rest without instruction. There is no rush to understand or remember any of this. Understanding is not required for balance to continue. elements do not ask to be noticed, they simply do their work. As you listen now, allow this deep trust to settle fully. You do not need to follow your breath, control your thoughts, or guide your body toward rest. The elements inside you already know how to slow, soften, and sustain. Awareness can release responsibility and drift gently into stillness. Balance continues without attention. Motion becomes minimal. Thought stretches and fades. And in this quiet completion, sleep arrives naturally, not because it is summoned, but because the body, guided by its elemental intelligence, has already prepared the way. At some point in the universe's long unfolding, matter stopped behaving like scattered remnants of fire and began acting like something that could arrange itself deliberately, even though no intention existed. Organization did not arrive suddenly, and it did not appear everywhere at once. It emerged wherever elements remained together long enough to influence one another repeatedly. Time was the key ingredient. Given enough time, matter learned that certain arrangements lasted longer than others, not through choice, but through endurance. Structures that survived simply continued, while those that could not dissolved quietly back into motion. This learning was not conscious, yet it was precise. Atoms bonded in ways that minimized energy loss. Molecules formed shapes that resisted disruption. Larger structures settled into configurations that distributed stress evenly rather than concentrating it. Matter did not seek order. It discovered that order survived. Over billions of years, this simple principle reshaped the universe. Organization became the default outcome wherever conditions allowed repetition without destruction. What endured became the foundation for what followed. As matter organized itself, relationships between elements grew more complex. Certain combinations proved stable across a wide range of conditions, while others existed only briefly. Carbon chains allowed flexibility. Silicon frameworks supported rigidity. Metals conducted energy and reinforced structure. These elemental preferences guided organization without direction, allowing systems to assemble themselves according to what could persist. The universe did not plan complexity. It allowed it to emerge wherever stability permitted layering rather than collapse. Gravity reinforced this process by gathering matter into environments where interaction was unavoidable. Within stars, planets, and disks of dust, elements encountered one another repeatedly, testing arrangements through constant interaction. Over time, inefficient configurations vanished, while stable ones accumulated. Organization became more refined, not because matter improved, but because unstable forms could not remain. The universe filtered itself through time, keeping what lasted and releasing what did not. As organization deepened, matter began to exhibit coherence across scales. Patterns repeated from the smallest structures to the largest. Spiral forms appeared in galaxies and shells. Layering occurred in planets and cells alike. Energy flowed through systems in predictable paths, creating rhythms that could be sustained indefinitely. The universe began to resemble a coordinated whole rather than a collection of isolated events. Organization did not remove randomness, it softened it into pattern. This capacity for organization allowed matter to support increasingly delicate processes. Environments stabilized enough to permit slow change rather than constant reaction. Systems could adjust gradually, absorbing disturbance without losing form. Matter became resilient rather than rigid, flexible rather than fragile. This resilience was not added from outside. It emerged naturally from organization itself. The universe learned how to continue without resetting, how to change without forgetting. As you listen now, allow this slow emergence of organization to quiet awareness completely. Nothing here requires understanding or effort. Matter learned how to arrange itself by remaining present long enough for patterns to form. The mind can do the same. Thought does not need to rush or resolve. It can settle into quiet structure, held gently by repetition and continuity. Just as matter learned to organize through patience, awareness can rest through stillness, drifting naturally towards sleep, supported by the same ancient rhythm that taught the universe how to endure. As organization spread through matter, the universe entered a phase where change no longer erased what had already formed. Structures began to persist, not because they were perfect, but because they were adequate under a wide range of conditions. This adequacy mattered more than elegance or efficiency. Matter learned to favor arrangements that could tolerate disturbance without disintegrating. Over time, this tolerance became the defining feature of organization. What survived was not what resisted change, but what could absorb it gently and remain intact afterward. This ability to absorb change transformed how systems behaved. Instead of responding to every shift with collapse or explosion, organized matter redistributed stress across its structure. Pressure moved inward. Energy flowed outward. Temperature differences smoothed themselves over time. These responses did not require oversight or correction. They emerged naturally from arrangement. Organization gave matter internal pathways through which imbalance could travel without causing destruction. The universe began to regulate itself through structure rather than force. As organization deepened, matter began to exhibit continuity across time. Processes unfolded slowly enough to be influenced by what had happened before. Cause and effect stretched into chains rather than moments. Systems developed histories. Planets remembered impacts through layered rock. Stars remembered fusion through composition. Matter itself became a record of its past states, carrying information forward through structure rather than memory. Organization allowed time to leave marks instead of passing unnoticed. These marks accumulated, shaping future behavior. Once a pattern formed, it influenced what could come next. Stable arrangements attracted further stability. Organized regions became centers around which more organization gathered. This feedback did not accelerate endlessly, it tempered itself. As complexity increased, change slowed. The universe traded speed for depth, choosing persistence over novelty. Organization did not rush toward complexity. It allowed complexity to settle where it could be sustained. Within these organized systems, energy found predictable routes. It entered, transformed, and exited without overwhelming form. Stars burned steadily rather than violently. Planets circulated heat through interiors and atmospheres. Matter no longer existed at the mercy of extremes. Organization gave it context. Energy was no longer an enemy of structure, but a participant within it. The universe learned how to host motion without losing shape. This hosting of motion is what allowed systems to become resilient. Resilience does not eliminate stress, it distributes it. Organized matter learned how to bend rather than break, to adjust rather than reset. This adjustment happened slowly, without drama, guided by arrangement rather than reaction. The universe discovered that survival did not require rigidity. It required balance maintained through gentle response. Organization became the quiet art of continuing. As you listen now, let this sense of gentle continuation settle into awareness. Nothing here pushes forward or pulls back. The universe learned to move without urgency, and the mind can follow the same lesson. Thought does not need to resolve or progress. It can remain, supported by structure that holds without tightening. Awareness can rest inside continuity, drifting without effort, as organization quietly sustains calm. Just as matter learned to endure through arrangement, the mind can endure through stillness, allowing sleep to arrive naturally, carried by the same patient rhythm that shaped everything. As organized matter continued to persist, something even more subtle emerged: predictability without rigidity. Systems began to behave in ways that could be anticipated, not because they were controlled, but because their internal arrangements distributed change evenly. Matter no longer reacted impulsively to every fluctuation. Instead, it responded with delay, buffering extremes and allowing adjustment to occur gradually. This predictability did not freeze the universe into sameness. It gave it a stable rhythm, a way to change without losing coherence. Organization became the silent agreement between matter and time. This agreement allowed matter to develop long-term processes that unfolded too slowly to be noticed moment by moment. Mountains rose and eroded, orbits stabilized and shifted subtly. Chemical compositions evolved through cycles that repeated endlessly without exhaustion. These processes required matter to remain organized long enough for time itself to become a shaping force. The universe stopped being defined by singular events and began to be defined by duration. Organization transformed existence from a sequence of moments into a continuous flow where change accumulated meaning rather than noise. Within this continuity, matter began to support environments where interaction could deepen rather than disperse. Elements remained close enough to influence one another repeatedly, refining their arrangements through countless iterations. Inefficient structures faded quietly, while balanced ones endured. This was not selection driven by intent, but by survivability across time. Organization filtered possibilities gently, allowing only those forms capable of persistence to remain. The universe learned restraint, not by limiting creation, but by letting time decide what stayed. As organization matured, systems began to cooperate across scales. Small structures nested within larger ones, each level supporting the next. Molecules formed tissues, tissues formed bodies, bodies formed ecosystems, ecosystems stabilized planets, planets orbited stars, stars shaped galaxies. None of these layers existed in isolation. Each depended on the stability of the layers beneath it. Organization allowed complexity to stack rather than collapse, creating depth instead of overload. The universe became layered, not crowded. This layering introduced a new quality: calm momentum. Processes moved forward without acceleration. Change unfolded steadily, guided by internal structure rather than external force. Matter no longer needed to be driven. It continued because continuation had become possible. Energy circulated through organized systems without overwhelming them. Motion existed within boundaries gentle enough to sustain form. The universe discovered how to move without urgency, how to exist without strain. Through this calm momentum, organization began to resemble wisdom, though no awareness was involved. Systems adjusted themselves when necessary, returned to balance when disturbed, and maintained coherence without supervision. This was not intelligence, but it was reliability, the ability to remain whole through variation. Organization taught matter how to trust itself. Once trust existed, continuity followed naturally. The universe no longer risked erasing itself with each change. As you listen now, allow this deep reliability to settle into awareness. Nothing here demands attention or effort. Just as matter learned to organize by remaining present through time, the mind can remain without pushing forward. Thought can soften into rhythm. Sensation can spread without direction. Awareness can rest inside continuity, held gently by structure that does not tighten. And in this quiet endurance, sleep does not arrive as an event, but as a natural state awareness resting within organization, just as the universe rests within itself. As matter fully settled into its capacity for organization, the universe reached a state where continuation no longer required correction. Systems did not need to be adjusted constantly because their internal arrangements already favored balance. This balance was not fragile. It was reinforced by repetition across time, by cycles that returned again and again to familiar patterns. Matter no longer existed in a state of trial and error. It had discovered forms that could endure, and endurance became the quiet signature of organization. The universe learned how to hold itself together without effort. In this state, change became gentle rather than disruptive. When disturbance entered an organized system, it spread through structure instead of shattering it. Energy moved along paths that already existed. Pressure redistributed itself calmly. Nothing rushed to respond. Organization created delay, and delay allowed response instead of reaction. This subtle slowing transformed the universe's character completely. Existence no longer felt like survival against collapse. It felt like continuation supported by structure that did not need reinforcement. Over immense spans of time, this capacity for gentle response allowed the universe to host increasingly delicate processes. Where once only extremes could shape matter, now subtle influences mattered. Small temperature shifts guided chemistry. Minor variations in composition shaped long-term evolution. Time itself became an active participant, refining systems through duration rather than force. Organization gave the universe patience, and patience allowed depth to emerge. Creation no longer depended on intensity, it depended on staying. This staying reshaped the flow of energy everywhere. Energy ceased to behave like something that needed to escape. It circulated, it returned. It lingered just long enough to be useful without becoming destructive. Stars burned steadily, planets retained warmth, atmospheres moderated extremes. Matter learned how to host energy without being consumed by it. Organization transformed energy from a threat into a partner. The universe became capable of sustaining motion without losing form. As organization matured fully, the universe reached a kind of quiet confidence. Systems no longer existed on the edge of failure. They carried margins, buffers, and reserves. Stability did not require vigilance. It existed because structure allowed it. Matter trusted its own arrangements because they had proven themselves across time. This trust did not eliminate change. It made change safe. The universe no longer needed to begin again. It could continue, knowing that continuity itself was stable. Within this continuity, complexity no longer felt like risk. Layers could form without overwhelming what lay beneath them. Processes could overlap without interference. The universe became spacious rather than crowded, deep rather than dense. Organization allowed existence to expand inward, creating room for subtlety, variation, and rest. Matter was no longer driven forward by necessity. It moved because movement had become sustainable. As you listen now, let this sense of complete organization settle fully into awareness. Nothing here needs to be held together. Nothing needs to be managed. Just as matter learned how to organize by remaining present through time, awareness can remain without direction. Thought can slow until it no longer seeks resolution. Sensation can spread until it becomes background. Attention can soften into stillness supported by structure that does not demand effort. The universe learned how to endure without tension, and that same endurance exists here. Awareness does not fall into sleep. It drifts into it naturally, carried by continuity that has always known how to hold. There is no edge, no moment to cross, only a gradual settling into rest as organization completes itself quietly, and the mind follows the same ancient rhythm, steady, calm, and finally, completely at ease. When matter learned how to organize itself across time, something unexpected became possible: the emergence of meaning without intention. Meaning did not appear as an idea or a goal. It appeared as continuity experienced from within a system capable of lasting. Once structures endured long enough to interact with their own past, existence gained depth. Events were no longer isolated. They related to what came before and influenced what came after. Meaning was not assigned. It accumulated naturally through persistence, becoming a quiet consequence of structure sustained over time. This accumulation required stability, but not rigidity. Systems needed to remain intact while still allowing change. Matter learned this balance slowly, refining arrangements that could adapt without losing identity. Through this balance, processes gained context. A planet's surface carried the memory of earlier conditions. A star's composition reflected generations of fusion. Even simple systems began to express a kind of narrative, shaped by what had already happened. Meaning emerged as history held within form, not as interpretation, but as continuity itself. As complexity increased, systems began to reflect their own organization inward. Feedback loops formed, allowing present states to be shaped by past configurations. This reflection did not require awareness. It arose automatically wherever structure persisted long enough to influence itself. Meaning here was not symbolic, it was structural. It existed as coherence across time, as the ability of a system to remain itself while changing gradually. The universe did not need consciousness to generate meaning, it needed only endurance. Within such systems, experience became possible, not experience as perception, but as internal differentiation. Regions behaved differently based on their history and arrangement. Gradients formed, pathways stabilized, processes unfolded with recognizable patterns. The universe began to express variation within unity, allowing complexity to deepen without fragmentation. Meaning lived in this differentiation, in the way systems developed character through structure rather than design. When life eventually emerged, it did not introduce meaning into an empty universe. It inherited a universe already shaped by continuity. Living systems simply internalized processes that had existed for billions of years. Metabolism echoed stellar energy flow. Memory echoed geological layering. Awareness echoed organizational stability. Meaning did not begin with life. Life became a new way meaning could be felt from within. The universe turned inward, not suddenly, but as a continuation of its long tendency toward organized persistence. Even now, meaning does not need to be sought or constructed. It exists wherever continuity is maintained, wherever something lasts long enough to be shaped by its own history, meaning quietly appears. It does not demand interpretation. It does not insist on attention. It simply exists as coherence across time. The universe carries meaning the same way it carries matter, without effort, without urgency, and without explanation. As you listen now, there is no need to hold on to these ideas or follow them forward. Meaning does not increase with attention, it deepens with rest. Just as the universe allowed meaning to emerge by sustaining structure gently, awareness can allow understanding to soften into background presence. Thought slows, interpretation loosens, continuity remains without effort. And in that continuity, sleep does not interrupt, meaning it preserves it, allowing awareness to rest inside structure that no longer needs to be watched, only trusted. The impulse to search for meaning did not begin with thought, language, or reflection. It arose from structure itself. Long before awareness could ask questions, systems were already responding to their own continuity. Wherever something persisted long enough to encounter its past, it began to behave differently than something that existed only briefly. This difference created a subtle orientation toward coherence, a tendency to maintain patterns that had already proven durable. Meaning, in this sense, is not something added to existence. It is what existence feels like when it lasts. As structures stabilized across time, they began to generate internal reference points. Present states were influenced by previous ones, and future states were shaped by what remained. This created direction without intention. Systems did not aim anywhere, yet they moved in ways that reflected accumulated history. The universe did not plan trajectories, but trajectories emerged naturally wherever continuity existed. Meaning appeared as direction felt from within structure, not as purpose, but as orientation shaped by endurance. This orientation became more pronounced as complexity increased. Systems that could adjust themselves in response to internal conditions developed preferences for states that preserved balance. These preferences were not conscious, but they functioned like tendencies, guiding behavior towards stability rather than collapse. Meaning emerged here as a quiet bias toward what could continue. The universe did not seek significance. It favored survivability, and survivability produced coherence. Coherence, sustained over time, became meaning experienced structurally rather than intellectually. When life emerged, this structural meaning became internalized. Living systems did not invent the search for meaning. They inherited it as a continuation of organization. Metabolic cycles echoed cosmic energy flows. Memory echoed geological layering. Homeostasis echoed planetary balance. The feeling of meaning arose because living systems were organized enough to feel continuity from within. Meaning was not discovered by life. It was expressed through life as a new mode of persistence. Even the act of questioning meaning reflects this deep inheritance. Questions arise when continuity becomes noticeable, when experience lasts long enough to be compared with itself. Reflection appears naturally. Meaning-seeking is not a flaw or a distraction. It is the universe sensing its own continuity through complex systems. The impulse to understand does not come from emptiness, but from structure stable enough to notice itself changing. Meaning emerges because something remains. This is why meaning cannot be forced or completed. It does not arrive as an answer, but as a condition. It deepens when systems rest within continuity rather than push beyond it. The universe did not rush to become meaningful. It allowed meaning to accumulate quietly through patience and repetition. Meaning grew as a side effect of staying, not as a reward for searching. As you listen now, there is no need to resolve or grasp anything here. Meaning does not disappear when attention softens. It becomes more diffuse, more stable. Just as structure allowed meaning to emerge without effort, awareness can allow understanding to drift into the background. Thought loosens its grip. Questions quiet themselves. Continuity remains, holding everything gently without needing explanation. And within that continuity, sleep arrives not as an interruption of meaning, but as one of its most natural expressions: awareness, resting inside structure, sustained without effort, exactly as the universe has always done. As continuity deepens, meaning begins to lose its sharp edges. It no longer feels like something to be reached, solved, or articulated. Instead, it settles into the background of existence, present without demanding recognition. Systems that endure long enough stop asking what they are for and simply continue being what they are. Meaning here is no longer directional. It becomes ambient. It fills space quietly, like gravity or temperature, shaping experience without announcing itself. The universe does not explain itself. It sustains itself, and that sustenance is felt as meaning without words. This softening of meaning occurs when structure becomes reliable. Once systems trust their own continuity, urgency fades. There is no longer a need to justify existence moment by moment. Stability itself becomes sufficient. Events unfold within a larger coherence that does not need constant reinforcement. Meaning stops appearing as a question and becomes a condition, something that holds experience gently rather than pulling it forward. The universe reaches a point where remaining is enough, and nothing more is required. Within such systems, attention naturally shifts from outcomes to presence. When survival is no longer in question, experience does not need to orient itself toward resolution. Time stretches. Moments are no longer evaluated solely by what they lead to. They are allowed to exist fully within themselves. Meaning becomes distributed rather than concentrated, spread across duration rather than fixed to purpose. This distribution makes meaning quieter, but also more stable. It does not spike or collapse. It simply remains. As complexity increases, this quiet meaning becomes internalized. Systems begin to carry coherence within themselves rather than deriving it from external reference points. Identity stabilizes not through assertion, but through continuity. There is no need to prove existence when existence continues reliably. Meaning becomes inseparable from being. It does not sit on top of experience, it permeates it. The universe no longer needs to ask what it is becoming. It becomes by continuing. This is why meaning often feels deepest when nothing is happening. In stillness, continuity becomes most visible. Without distraction, the simple fact of persistence comes into focus. Breathing continues. Structures hold. Time moves forward without disruption. Meaning reveals itself not as insight, but as calm recognition. Nothing needs to change for meaning to be present. It is already there, embedded in the act of remaining. When awareness reaches this state, effort naturally dissolves. There is no advantage in searching further. Searching implies absence, but here nothing is missing. Meaning does not intensify with movement, it stabilizes with rest. Systems that endure long enough learn this implicitly. They stop accelerating toward answers and begin to trust continuity itself. The universe models this patience everywhere in orbits, cycles, and rhythms that repeat without explanation. As you listen now, allow this softened meaning to surround awareness completely. There is nothing to grasp and nothing to release. Meaning does not require attention to exist. It remains whether it is noticed or not. Thought can loosen without fear of loss. Presence continues quietly, supported by structure that has already proven it can endure. And within that quiet endurance, sleep arrives gently, not as a retreat from meaning, but as a deepening of it, awareness resting inside continuity that no longer needs to be understood, only allowed. At the deepest point of continuity, meaning no longer behaves like something separate from existence. It does not stand above events or sit behind them as an explanation. It becomes indistinguishable from the act of continuing itself. When structure has endured long enough, it no longer needs interpretation to feel complete. The universe does not pause to understand what it has become. It continues, and in that continuation, meaning is already present. Nothing needs to be added, corrected, or resolved. Remaining is sufficient. This is where the sense of searching finally dissolves. Searching implies distance between what is and what should be, but here there is no such separation. Structure has stabilized enough to hold experience without strain. Time flows without urgency. Events unfold without demanding significance. Meaning does not concentrate around outcomes. It spreads evenly across duration. Every moment carries the same quiet weight, simply because it exists within continuity. The universe no longer leans forward. It rests within itself. Within this resting, experience softens. Attention no longer needs to track or evaluate. The need to define fades because nothing feels incomplete. Systems that endure long enough reach this state naturally. They stop accelerating, stop adjusting, stop asking. Not because questions are forbidden, but because they are no longer necessary. Meaning here is not an answer. It is the absence of the need for one. Structure has proven itself reliable, and reliability creates peace. This peace is not silence, but steadiness. Motion continues, yet nothing feels unstable. Change still occurs, but it no longer threatens identity. Structure absorbs variation effortlessly, allowing existence to feel spacious rather than fragile. Meaning becomes wide instead of sharp, deep instead of intense. It does not flare up, it settles. The universe demonstrates this everywhere in slow orbits, repeating cycles, and rhythms that require no attention to continue. As meaning settles into this wide, quiet state, awareness naturally follows. There is nothing left to pursue, nothing left to hold together. Thought relaxes because continuity no longer needs supervision. Identity softens without disappearing. Experience becomes less about direction and more about presence. The universe does not disappear when it stops seeking meaning. It becomes more itself. Meaning does not vanish. It diffuses gently through everything. This diffusion is what allows rest to feel complete. Sleep does not interrupt meaning here. It carries it forward quietly, the same way continuity carries structure across time. Awareness does not fall away, it loosens its grip. The mind does not shut down, it settles. Meaning remains without being noticed, held by patterns that no longer need to be watched. As you listen now, allow this final settling to complete itself. There is nowhere else to go and nothing else to understand. The universe has already done the work of continuity for you. Awareness can release effort entirely, trusting structure that has endured far longer than thought. Breath continues, balance holds, time moves gently. And within this quiet, complete continuity, sleep arrives naturally, not as an ending, but as awareness resting fully inside, meaning that no longer asks to be found. At the furthest edge of continuity, where structure no longer needs to assert itself, everything begins to return to stillness. Not an empty stillness, but one that is full of everything that has already happened. Motion does not stop here, it softens. Change does not end, it slows until it becomes almost imperceptible. The universe does not collapse into silence. It settles into a state where nothing needs to be emphasized, where existence continues without drawing attention to itself. Stillness is not the absence of life, but the condition that allows life to rest. In this state, time feels wide rather than directional. Moments no longer push toward the next. They rest beside one another, equal in weight and importance. The future no longer pulls, and the past no longer presses. Everything that needs to happen is already happening at its own pace. The universe does not hurry itself forward. It trusts the rhythm it has established over billions of years. This trust creates a calm so deep that effort becomes unnecessary. Nothing needs to be adjusted or improved. Everything is already held. Structure remains, but it no longer feels rigid. Organization becomes background presence rather than active force. Systems continue to function without announcing their activity. Balance holds quietly. Energy circulates gently. Patterns repeat without effort. The universe has learned how to sustain itself without tension, and that learning expresses itself as stillness that does not interrupt motion. It is possible to be active without urgency, present without attention, and whole without explanation. Within this stillness, awareness begins to loosen its edges. There is no need to focus or follow. Thought slows not because it is forced to, but because there is nothing left to respond to. Sensation spreads evenly, no longer clustering around concern or direction. The body rests inside patterns that have already proven reliable. Breath continues without instruction. Balance maintains itself without supervision. Awareness is free to drift because structure no longer requires monitoring. This drifting does not lead anywhere. It simply deepens rest. Identity remains, but it no longer needs to define itself. Experience continues, but it no longer asks to be interpreted. The universe does not disappear in stillness. It becomes more itself. Everything that was built through fire, matter, organization, and meaning now rests inside continuity so complete that nothing needs to stand out. Stillness becomes the natural expression of endurance. As you listen now, allow this return to stillness to complete itself. There is nothing to hold on to and nothing to release. The universe has already arranged everything required for rest. Awareness can soften completely, trusting the same patience that shaped stars, worlds, and lives. Thought fades gently, not into nothing, but into background presence. Motion continues quietly. Time widens, and sleep arrives naturally, not as a break from existence, but as the most effortless form of belonging within it. As stillness deepens, The universe enters a state where nothing needs to happen next, not because everything is finished, but because nothing is missing. Motion continues quietly in the background, yet it no longer asks for attention. Processes unfold at their own pace, free from urgency or expectation. There is no signal to respond to, no imbalance to correct. Everything that is required for continuity is already in place. The universe rests inside its own structure, trusting arrangements refined over unimaginable time. In this resting, effort dissolves naturally. There is no force pulling awareness forward, and no resistance holding it back. Thought loses its momentum not through suppression, but through irrelevance. Without demands, there is nothing for thought to organize around. It stretches, thins, and blends into the wider field of experience. Sensation becomes diffuse, spreading gently rather than focusing sharply. The body continues its quiet rhythms, supported by patterns that no longer need to be monitored. Time itself begins to feel less segmented. Moments no longer arrive as distinct units demanding recognition. Instead, they flow into one another smoothly, without edges. Past and future soften, losing their weight. What remains is duration without direction, presence without effort. The universe has no need to count or measure here. It simply continues, carrying everything gently without highlighting any single point. Stillness becomes expansive rather than narrow. Within this expansive stillness, awareness no longer needs to locate itself. There is no center to hold on to and no boundary to maintain. Identity loosens, not because it disappears, but because it no longer needs to assert itself. Experience becomes simple again, not in the sense of lacking depth, but in the sense of being free from complication. Everything that once required coordination now coordinates itself quietly. The universe does the work of holding, allowing awareness to rest. This rest is not passive or empty. It is full of continuity, layered with everything that has already occurred. Fire, matter, organization, meaning all of it remains present, but none of it needs to speak. Stillness is not a void. It is a fullness so complete that nothing needs to stand out. The universe does not pause here. It settles, the way water settles when left undisturbed, finding its own level without effort. As you listen now, there is nothing you need to follow or remember. Nothing here is asking to be understood. Awareness can drift freely, supported by a structure that has already proven it can endure without attention. Breath continues, balance holds, time widens softly, and sleep arrives not as something that happens, but as something that has been quietly allowed all along, awareness resting inside a universe that no longer needs anything from it. As continuity holds without effort, awareness begins to understand something without needing to think it. Nothing is required of it anymore. There is no role to play, no task to complete, no state to achieve. The universe is already carrying everything that needs to continue. Structures remain intact, rhythms repeat gently, balance sustains itself without supervision. Awareness senses this reliability and gradually releases its habit of monitoring, of checking, of staying alert for change. There is nothing here that demands readiness. Everything is already being handled. This release does not happen suddenly. It unfolds the way dusk unfolds, slowly dimming contrasts until edges soften and distinctions blur. Thought does not stop. It simply loses its urgency. Ideas drift without forming chains. Images appear and fade without asking to be followed. The mind does not shut down, it loosens. Awareness remains present, but no longer concentrated. It spreads evenly, like light at the end of day, touching everything without focusing on anything in particular. As attention spreads, the sense of separation weakens. Inside and outside no longer feel sharply defined. Sensation becomes background texture rather than signal. The body feels held rather than directed. Breath continues, not as an action, but as a quiet rhythm that no longer needs to be noticed. The elements inside the body continue their work without interruption, sustaining balance in the same way they always have. Awareness does not need to assist them. Trust replaces effort. In this state, the mind begins to recognize that letting go is not an action. It is the absence of holding. Nothing needs to be pushed away or released deliberately. Gripping simply fades when it is no longer useful. Awareness loosens its attachment to orientation, to direction, to outcome. There is nowhere to go, and this absence of destination feels safe rather than empty. The universe is not moving toward anything urgent. It is continuing, and continuation is enough. Time itself becomes less noticeable here. There is no clear sense of before or after. Moments blend softly, like waves overlapping without collision. The need to track sequence dissolves. Experience becomes a gentle field rather than a timeline. Awareness rests inside duration without measuring it. This is not confusion, it is ease. The universe does not count its moments at this depth. It simply exists within them. As you listen now, allow this gentle letting go to complete itself without assistance. There is nothing to remember and nothing to anticipate. Awareness can float without anchor because structure remains beneath it, steady and reliable. Thought thins, sensation softens. Identity rests lightly, no longer needing to define itself. And sleep arrives quietly, not as a transition you notice, but as a natural continuation of letting go awareness easing into rest, supported by a universe that has already learned how to hold everything without effort. At the deepest point of settling, awareness no longer feels like something that belongs to you. It feels like something you are resting inside of. There is no edge where attention ends and silence begins. Everything blends gently, without effort, without transition. The universe does not fade away here. It becomes so stable that it no longer needs to announce itself. Continuity holds without tension. Nothing asks to be followed. Nothing asks to be completed. Everything that needed to happen has already found its place. In this space, the idea of doing dissolves completely. There is no action left to perform, not even the action of resting. Rest is simply what remains when effort disappears. Thought no longer tries to organize experience because experience no longer needs organizing. Sensations drift through awareness softly, like distant weather that does not require response. The body is present, but it no longer feels separate from the quiet that surrounds it. Breathing continues, not as something you notice, but as part of the same background stillness that holds everything else. Time no longer moves forward in the way it once did. It spreads outward instead, becoming wide and soft rather than directional. Moments do not arrive or leave. They overlap gently, creating a sense of endless continuation without sequence. There is no before that matters, and no after to anticipate. The universe does not count here. It does not measure. It simply remains, and remaining feels complete. Awareness floats inside duration without needing to know where it is. Identity loosens until it becomes almost transparent. There is no need to hold on to who you are or where you have been. Continuity does not require a name. The structures that sustain you have already proven they can do so without attention. Elements continue their quiet coordination. Balance holds. Systems regulate themselves gently. Nothing depends on awareness staying alert. Trust replaces effort entirely, not as a decision, but as a natural consequence of reliability. At this depth, even letting go is no longer something that happens. There is nothing left to release because nothing is being held. Awareness does not fall into sleep. It simply stops staying awake. The distinction between being present and being at rest dissolves. Consciousness softens until it blends with the same quiet endurance that has always carried matter, structure, and meaning forward without pause. Everything that once felt active now feels settled into place. The universe is not doing anything special here. It is simply being what it has learned to be over billions of years, stable, patient, and complete. And you are not entering something new. You are returning to something very old. The same calm that shaped stars and worlds now holds awareness gently, without demand. Nothing needs to be understood. Nothing needs to be remembered. Everything is already holding you. And as that holding continues, without effort, without edge, sleep arrives naturally, not as a moment you notice, but as the quiet truth that awareness has been resting all along.